Listen, if you think making money in the stock market is about finding the next hot tip or following some guru's system, you're about to lose everything you have. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. Hell, it happened to me more than once. They called me the Boy Plunger, the great bear of Wall Street, the man who broke the bucket shops and made millions when others lost everything. But let me tell you something that matters more than all those titles combined. I also lost those millions, more than once. I've been dead broke 4 times in my career. Dead broke. Not just down on my luck, but wiped clean, starting over with nothing but the clothes on my back and the hard-earned wisdom burning in my brain. And each time I clawed my way back, it wasn't because I got luckier or found some secret system. It was because I finally learned to respect the one thing that separates the successful speculator from the fool with his money risk management. You see, any man can make money in a bull market. Hell, I've seen shoeshine boys give stock tips during the roaring rallies of the early 1900s, and some of those tips paid off handsomely for a while. But making money and keeping money, those are 2 entirely different games. The market will teach you this lesson whether you want to learn it or not. The only question is whether that lesson cost you $100 or $100,000. Today, I'm going to share with you the 10 risk management rules that took me decades to learn, rules written in blood and carved out of heartbreak. These aren't just trading tips, son. These are survival principles for anyone foolish enough or brave enough to try to make a living from the ticker tape. Never risk more than you can afford to lose. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Elementary. But I've seen more fortunes destroyed by this single principle than by all the market crashes combined. When I was 15 years old, working at Payne Weber's Boston office, posting prices on the big board, I thought I had it all figured out. I'd saved up $5 whole dollars, and I was ready to conquer Wall Street. I lost it all on my first trade. But here's the thing that saved me. That $5 was money I could lose without starving. I didn't bet my room and board. I didn't gamble away my job. I kept my risk small because I was small. As I grew older and my capital grew larger, I had to fight the natural human tendency to let my bet size grow with my confidence. I remember 1907 during the panic. I'd built up a substantial position against Union Pacific, convinced the market was heading south, and I was right, dead right. But I'd risked so much of my capital on that single conviction that when the stock dropped, then rallied sharply on intervention rumors, I nearly got wiped out before my thesis could prove correct. The lesson? Even when you're right about the direction, you can still lose everything if you risk too much. The market doesn't care about your rent money, your children's schooling, or your wife's medical bills. It will take everything you give it, and it won't lose a minute of sleep over your suffering. Make this rule sacred. Never, and I mean never, risk money that you need for living. The market feeds on desperation, and desperate money always loses. Always use stop losses and cut your losses short. This rule cost me more than any other to learn, and it's the one that saved me more than any other once I finally got religion about it. A stop loss isn't just a price point, it's an admission that you're human, that you can be wrong, and that being wrong is acceptable as long as you don't let it destroy you. In my early days, I'd watch a stock I'd bought at 50 drop to 45, then 40, then 35, all while I held on like a drowning man clutching driftwood. It's got to come back, I'd tell myself. The fundamentals haven't changed, but the market doesn't care about your fundamentals when it's in a selling mood. I learned this lesson the hard way in 1906 with Union Pacific again. I'd bought heavily at 180, convinced it was headed to 200. When it started dropping, I held on. At 170, I convinced myself it was temporary. At 160, I started sweating. By 150, I was in real trouble, but instead of cutting my losses, I did what every amateur does. I doubled down. That mistake cost me nearly everything I'd built up to that point, but it taught me something worth more than money. In speculation, your first loss is your smallest loss. Every moment you hold a losing position hoping for it to come back is a moment you're not using that capital for a better opportunity. From that day forward, I decided on my exit point before I ever entered a position. Not hoping to exit, not planning to exit if things got really bad, deciding exactly where I would exit, no matter what stories I told myself, no matter what tips I heard, no matter what the newspapers said. The tape doesn't lie, son. When a stock breaks down through your stop, it's telling you something. Listen to it. Never average down on a losing position. This rule will save your financial life if you let it, and it will destroy you if you ignore it. Averaging down, buying more of a losing stock because it's cheaper now, is the most seductive trap in all of speculation. It feels so logical, so smart. If I liked it at 50, I should love it at 40. Nonsense. Pure, deadly nonsense. When I was running my operations in the early 1900s, I watched pool operators use this psychology against the public every single day. They'd let a stock run up to attract buyers, then start unloading their shares. As the price dropped, the amateurs would start buying more, thinking they were getting a bargain. The more it dropped, the more they bought, all the way down to ruin. I remember one poor soul in 1903, a cotton merchant from Alabama who'd made a fortune in his business and thought he could conquer Wall Street. He bought steel at 45, convinced it was going to 60. When it hit 40, he bought more. At 35, more still. By the time steel hit 25, he'd invested his entire fortune and then some. He lost everything: his business, his house, his family's future. The market was trying to tell him something from the very first drop, but he wouldn't listen. He was so busy catching what he thought was a falling bargain that he never stopped to ask why everyone else was selling. Here's what I learned. When a stock goes against you, the market knows something you don't. Maybe it's insider information, maybe it's a shift in business conditions, maybe it's just the natural ebb and flow of speculation. But whatever it is, fighting it by throwing good money after bad is the surest way to turn a small loss into a disaster. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and cheaply. There will always be another opportunity for those who preserve their capital. Diversify your risk and never put all your money in one trade. I learned this rule the hard way, not once, but several times throughout my career. There's something intoxicating about being absolutely certain you're right about a stock, about feeling that conviction burn in your chest like fire, but that same fire can burn down everything you've built. In 1901, I was convinced, absolutely convinced, that Northern Pacific was going to collapse. I'd done my research, watched the tape, seen all the signs, so I bet big, bigger than big. I put nearly my entire account into short positions on Northern Pacific, certain I was about to make the score of a lifetime. And I was right about the direction. Northern Pacific did have troubles. But what I didn't count on was the pool operations, the manipulation, the sheer force of money fighting against the natural trend of the stock. My position was so large that I couldn't weather the temporary rallies while waiting for my thesis to prove correct. I nearly got wiped out being right because I'd concentrated all my risk in one basket. It didn't matter that my analysis was sound or that the stock eventually did what I predicted. I almost lost everything because I'd forgotten that individual stocks can do anything in the short term, no matter how compelling your reasoning. From that day forward, I never risked more than 10% of my capital on any single position, no matter how certain I felt. Not 15%, not 12%, 10%, maximum. This rule saved me more times than I can count, and it let me stay in the game long enough for my winners to make up for my losers. Remember this. Even the best speculator in the world is wrong 4 times out of 10. If you concentrate all your money in 1 or 2 positions, those 4 wrong times will destroy you before your 6 right times can save you. Stay small when you're wrong, size up when you're right. This is where most speculators get it backwards, and it's what separates the professionals from the amateurs. The natural human tendency is to bet bigger when you're losing, trying to win back what you've lost in one big score. And when you're winning, the tendency is to get conservative, to lock in profits before they slip away. That's exactly backwards from how you should operate. I discovered this principle during my operations against steel in 1907. I'd started with a small position, just testing the waters, seeing how the stock would react. When it started moving my way, instead of getting nervous and taking profits, I added to my position, not all at once, not recklessly, but methodically, like a general reinforcing success. When you're right about a stock, when the tape is confirming your judgment, when everything is going according to your analysis, that's when you should be increasing your commitment, not decreasing it. That's when the market is telling you that your reasoning is sound, that you're in harmony with the larger forces moving the stock. But when you're wrong, when the position is going against you, that's when you should be reducing your exposure, not increasing it. The market is trying to teach you something. Listen to it. I've seen men make fortunes by learning to ride their winners and cut their losers. And I've seen just as many men lose fortunes by cutting their winners and riding their losers. The choice is simple. But making the right choice when money is on the line and emotions are running high, that takes discipline most men never develop. Never trade on tips, rumors, or inside information. Young speculator, let me tell you something that might save you years of painful lessons. The market is full of stories, and most of them will cost you money if you listen to them. In the early 1900s, Wall Street was swimming with tips. Pool operators would spread rumors to move stocks. Newspaper reporters would plant stories. Even legitimate businessmen would share confidential information at their clubs, thinking they were helping their friends make money. I fell for this trap more times than I care to admit. In 1902, I got what I thought was solid inside information about a railroad merger. A man who claimed to be connected to the deal assured me it was a sure thing. I bought heavily, convinced I was getting in on the ground floor of something big. The merger never materialized. Turns out, the inside information was deliberately planted by operators looking to unload their shares to suckers like me. I lost a substantial sum, but more importantly, I learned that tips and rumors are usually tools of manipulation, not genuine opportunities. Here's what I discovered. The best information is what the market itself tells you through the tape. Price and volume, support and resistance. The way a stock acts when news comes out, these are the only reliable sources of information about what a stock is really worth and where it's really headed. If information is really valuable, why would someone give it away? And if it's not valuable enough for them to act on exclusively, why should you risk your money on it? Trust the tape, son. It's the only source that can't lie to you, because it represents the collective judgment of everyone willing to put real money behind their opinions. Trade with the trend, and don't fight the tape. The tape tells a story, and that story is written in the language of money. Men who've learned to read this language make fortunes. Men who ignore it lose everything they have and everything they might have had. I spent my early years trying to pick bottoms and tops, thinking I was smarter than the market, believing I could see turns before anyone else. Sometimes I was right, and those successes made me overconfident. But more often, I was early, which in speculation is the same thing as being wrong. In 1906, I was convinced that Union Pacific was overvalued at 180. I sold short, expecting it to decline. Instead, it rallied to 200, then 210, then 220. Every point it rose cost me money, but I held on, convinced that my analysis was correct and the market was wrong. I was fighting the tape, and the tape was winning. Eventually, Union Pacific did decline, and my analysis proved correct. But by then, the temporary rally had cost me so much that I couldn't enjoy the profits when I was finally vindicated. That experience taught me one of the most important lessons of my career. Markets can remain irrational far longer than you can remain solvent. When the general trend is up, trade from the long side. When it's down, trade from the short side. Don't try to be a hero by catching falling knives or calling market tops. The trend is your friend until it bends. And when it bends, don't fight it, follow it. Keep detailed records of every trade. This might sound like bookkeeping advice, but I assure you, it's one of the most important rules for long-term success in speculation. Memory is a liar, especially when money is involved. Men remember their winners and forget their losers. They remember being right and forget being wrong. They remember their good reasoning and forget their mistakes. From my earliest days, I kept detailed records of every trade, not just the profit and loss, but the reasoning behind each position, the market conditions when I entered and exited, what I learned from each experience. These records became my textbook, more valuable than any course at any university. Looking back through these records taught me patterns about my own behavior that I never would have noticed otherwise. I discovered that I lost money consistently when I traded immediately after reading newspaper articles. I found that my best trades came when I'd been patient, waiting for the right setup rather than forcing opportunities. I learned that I had a tendency to exit winning positions too early on Fridays, and that I made impulsive decisions when I was tired or stressed. These insights didn't come from reading books or listening to other traders. They came from studying my own performance with the cold objectivity that only written records can provide. Your trading records are like a mirror that shows you your true performance, stripped of the stories you tell yourself about why you won or lost. Study them religiously, and they'll teach you more about speculation than all the market gurus combined. Control your emotions because fear and greed are your enemies. Let me tell you something about human nature that I learned the hardest way possible. The same emotions that make us human also make us terrible speculators. Fear makes us sell at bottoms, greed makes us buy at tops, hope makes us hold losing positions too long, overconfidence makes us risk too much when we're winning. During the panic of 1907, I watched grown men cry as they saw their fortunes evaporate. I watched others become so paralyzed by fear that they couldn't make any decisions at all, watching their positions deteriorate while they sat frozen. And I watched still others get so caught up in the excitement of falling prices that they shorted everything in sight, only to get crushed when the inevitable rally came. I wasn't immune to these emotions. During my biggest winning streak in 1909, I became so overconfident that I started taking larger and larger risks. I felt like I couldn't lose, like I'd finally mastered the market completely. That overconfidence nearly cost me everything I'd built. The market has a way of teaching humility to those who think they've conquered it. The moment you start believing you're infallible, the moment you let greed overrule your discipline, the moment you let fear drive your decisions instead of your analysis, that's the moment the market begins to take back everything it's given you. Successful speculation requires the emotional control of a surgeon and the patience of a hunter. You must be able to act decisively when action is required, and wait patiently when patience is required. This level of emotional control isn't natural. It must be developed through practice and discipline. Always keep reserve capital and never be all in. This final rule might be the most important of all, because it's what allows you to survive the inevitable mistakes and market surprises that will come your way. Reserve capital isn't just money sitting in your account, it's your ability to take advantage of opportunities and your insurance against catastrophe. I learned this lesson during my first major setback in 1901. I'd been so successful in my early operations that I'd put nearly everything I had into active positions. When the market turned against me, I had no reserves to fall back on, no dry powder to deploy when opportunities arose. I watched helplessly as stocks I'd been tracking for months fell to incredibly attractive levels, but I had no capital available to take advantage. Meanwhile, I was forced to close positions at losses because I couldn't weather the temporary adverse moves. It was like being at a feast while starving to death. From that experience, I developed the discipline to never have more than 70% of my capital actively invested, no matter how attractive the opportunity seemed. That remaining 30% served two purposes. It was my insurance policy against unexpected losses, and it was my war chest for exceptional opportunities. During the 1907 panic, while other speculators were being forced to liquidate at terrible prices, I was able to buy quality stocks at bargain prices because I'd maintained my reserves. That discipline, more than any brilliant analysis or market timing, was what allowed me to come out ahead when others were being ruined. Reserve capital gives you something that no amount of market knowledge can provide: options. When you have reserves, you can be patient. You can wait for the right opportunities instead of forcing trades. You can weather temporary setbacks without being forced into panic selling. Without reserves, you're at the mercy of every market fluctuation. You become a slave to your positions instead of their master. So there you have it, young speculator. 10 rules that took me a lifetime to learn, paid for with millions made and lost, bought with sleepless nights and gray hairs, and the kind of education that can't be found in any school. I've told you these rules, but knowing them and following them are two different things entirely. The market will test your discipline every day you're in it. It will whisper sweet temptations in your ear. It will offer you shortcuts and sure things and opportunities too good to pass up. When those moments come, and they will come, remember the man who made millions and lost them, who rose from poverty to wealth and back again, who learned these lessons not from books but from the harsh realities of Wall Street. The market is the greatest teacher in the world, but it charges the highest tuition. These 10 rules are your scholarship, paid for by my mistakes, so that you don't have to make them yourself. But here's the final truth, the one that matters most. All the rules in the world won't help you if you don't have the discipline to follow them when your money is on the line and your emotions are running high. That discipline, that's something you'll have to develop yourself, one trade at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of choosing long-term success over short-term satisfaction at a time. The market is still there, son. The ticker still runs, the opportunities still come, and fortunes are still made and lost every single day. But now you have something I didn't have when I started, the wisdom of someone who's walked this path before you. Use it wisely, trade carefully, and remember, in speculation, the man who can keep his money is worth more than the man who can make it. The rest is up to you. Good luck, young speculator. May your winners run long and your losses stay short.